we're living in a time, as we all know, where we have 4 or 5 or 6 generations that we're dealing with as clients. Right. We never had that before, and each demographic cohort has a particular viewpoint, particular need from millennials and Gen Zs or Zs. They like their sustainability, like their technology, and I'm a baby boomer by 1 year. Us baby boomers, by the way, I would say we're so anxious for baby boomers to deaccumulate. It's not going to happen as fast as you think it's going to, okay? Because we're all retiring, but we might be supplementing our income with other ways. We don't need to deaccumulate even when we retire, and or those that are wealthy enough want to accumulate still or preserve their wealth for the next generation or for philanthropy.
Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and for my entire career, it's been my mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to hear from the visionaries, from the leaders, from the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, I'm going to leave you with at least one winnable idea that you can start implementing right away. Let's turn the page on building a better business. Welcome to today's podcast. This is Turning the Page with your host, Chris Reynolds. And today we have a very special guest, my good friend, Barry McInerney. I always have to slide through that last name because there's McInerney, who is currently the president and CEO of Mackenzie. And I thought this would be, Barry, this would be great on my podcast because you've seen it all. You've been on both sides of the border. Although born in Canada, you've lived in the United States, had a great career there, moved in, took over Mackenzie. Mackenzie has just been doing fantastic under your leadership. Not only that, I know that you've done work in China, so you've seen some of the industry there as well. And you're about to retire. Now I know that it's retirement is what people are saying, but I know it's just another phase in your particular journey that you're going on. And I'm very happy about that. And I thought, this would be a great way to talk about, some of the trends, what are happening in the wealth management business? Where's the future of advice? So welcome, Barry. This is awesome.
Oh, Chris, it's great to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
This is great. So first of all, let's start with the end. You're about to, taking the next step on your journey. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and what are you going to do next, and why? And I know I'm very excited for you, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that to start off.
Well, it's I've been answering that question quite a bit, as you can imagine, this last several months, and I have given a lot of thought with myself, and my wife Rose, and I think I'm not alone. COVID, we all worked, we ran the company virtually. So we were very fortunate to run Mackenzie and the asset management industry and the wealth industry actually could run essentially virtually. We didn't know that, but we could. And so I've been home for almost 2 years, and I've not been home for 20 years, to be quite honest with you. Because as you mentioned, we moved the family down to the United States in 2001, just before 9/11 in New York City, by the way. That's a whole different story. But anyway, we've been in the U.S. a long time. We're American citizens, but still proud Canadians. And so I've been actually most of the time working in a city where my family doesn't reside. It's, New York and Seattle, New York, Chicago, and now it's Toronto, and I have a place there. And my mom and siblings are, but my family's in the United States. So I guess there's realization that I've been not just traveling a lot for the job, which everyone does, and that's not the issue, traveling a lot to just commute to the job. And so, that puts some miles on the treads a little bit. And so the COVID allowed me to stay home, and I'm quite enjoying it. And grandkids came early for Rose and I. They came. Our 3 daughters had 5 in 3 years. It was like a flurry of activity, and we're enjoying that. It's kind of like a bit of a redo, right? We all, I think I'd like to think I was a pretty good father, but I don't mind a redo. There's some things I could work on again. And Rose and I, we like to do a lot of community work and charity work. We're getting more involved with that with the church and elsewhere. And I don't know what it is yet, Chris. I have an academic itch to scratch. I'm not sure what it is. I used to teach in the 90s a little bit, university, and I like that. And I was saying maybe I get my doctorate. And I talked to a couple of deans of business schools, and I'm 58. And they said, we have an expression here in the South US, you may be aware of it, saying that dog don't, what does that say? That dog don't bark no more, right?
So dog don't hunt.
Yeah. Thank you. Don't hunt. Thank you, Chris. Good point. So we're going to work it out. As I always say, I'm young. I'm old enough to retire. I'm young enough to try something else. And family time, grandkids, Rose Nice, and charity work, and something academia. The board work will probably come. I've been advised by my good friends and mentors, don't board up from day one. Take your time with that. Take a break. Rejuvenate body, mind, and soul. And so that's where I'm at right now. So thanks for asking. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's fantastic, though. And as I said, I'm so happy for you. That's we all do our journey, and this is a great way to take that next step. I love it.
Thank you.
So you've had a great career. As I said, you've worked in a lot of different facets of the financial industry. What would you say if you were giving advice to people? What are some of the keys to success? What are the things that you've observed, not only, from firsthand experience with yourself, but being around other successful people? What are the things that you'd pass on to our listeners?
It's like a lot of us, I like watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I had to do that because I had to give the commencement speech at Rotman. I'm a Rotman grad last fall, and been asked a few times to speak to youngsters to me at least. And I'd say just quickly, they're always this thing, hard work first. So hard work, just by the way, it's the cornerstone of success. Right. You have to work. You have to work really hard. But head down on hard work and head up in the sense of be aware of your surroundings and network and ask questions and ask for help. And I've always said, a lot of folks say follow your passion. I'd say find what you do well. And experiment. When you find what you do really well, that creates confidence, and that becomes your passion. If you want to play the piano, you can do that at night or in a band on a weekend. But find what you're really good at work. And because early days you might want a portfolio management. Maybe you're good at marketing, or maybe you're good at systems, what have you. So if you explore it and find that, and do your 20,000 hours Malcolm Gladwell-ish on that particular thing you're good at, it'll become your passion. And finally, and you would know this. You're very good at this, Chris. Communication skills is so important. And I tell this to the graduates. So listen, keep honing them. Public speaking, which is everyone hates to do, public speaking, writing notes to people. My goodness, in cursive. I don't know if the youngsters can do cursive anymore.
Can they even write anymore? I don't know.
Oh, no. Yeah. But you know what? Just continue to hone your communication skills. Take advantage anytime that lean in on a meeting, you're young, to offer some insights. If you're a team leader and you have to present that, put up your hand and present it. It's definitely terrifying to some folks, but just hone your communication skills. It will last you your entire career, and you'll enjoy it. And ultimately, if you think about what we all do, financial advisors, asset managers, anybody, we're trying to convey complex topics in simple ways. That's the most challenging. It's not actually doing the math that's most challenging. It's actually the communication. I get the most challenge, most fun of trying to figure out how to communicate something very effectively versus trying to, hit the nail with the hammer. I can do that, but how do you communicate that? So anyway, a long-winded answer but I have been asked that question a lot, Chris. I think it's important. And I have a little bit of experience to offer and love to continue the discussion at any point with anybody who wants to call me up, but I think it's really important.
Absolutely. And I would agree. And in fact, I remember Warren Buffett saying the number one asset you can possess is your ability to communicate ideas. And you've been obviously very good at that, again, with a large organization, communicating those ideas and bringing what is a complex business, which is asset management. And we do make it incredibly complex into some very simple ideas that people can grasp onto, and giving that sort of North Star. And speaking of that, if you were talking to the leaders of the future, staff, financial advisor, what is the sort of one thing other than communication that you think you're going to see in the future? Where do you've been in the business a long time. As you look forward, where do you think people should hone their skills?
Oh, goodness. I'm an actuary, which I readily hide that fact, particularly in social settings. I didn't know that.
And I've known you a long time. Boy,
thank you. I appreciate that, Chris. Anyway, so I'm very, like a lot of us, fascinated with demographic trends. I think that demography is really pushes a lot of future trends. And what I'm fascinated with, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question directly, but it's something for advisors to think about, is that we're living in a time, as we all know, where we have what, 4 or 5 or 6 generations that we're dealing with as clients.
Right.
We never had that before. And each demographic cohort has a particular viewpoint, particular need from, millennials and Gen Zs or Zs. They like their sustainability, like their technology. And I'm a baby boomer by 1 year. Us baby boomers, by the way, I would say we're so anxious for baby boomers to deaccumulate. It's not going to happen as fast as you think it's going to, okay? Because we're all retiring, but we might be supplementing our income with other ways, and we don't need to deaccumulate even when we retire. And or those that are wealthy enough want to accumulate still or preserve their wealth for the next generation, or for philanthropy. There's a lot of women, obviously, going to be, they already are controlling, half the wealth in Canada, United States. So this is something that's really, so you got to really, obviously know your client. I think potential advisors know what they mean by know their client, but particularly just try to continue to understand those different demographic cohorts and how they're connected and what their needs are. And I think you'll be really successful if you do that, because obviously a successful wealth business and asset management business will be an ability, whatever it is, products, services, speaking, communication, to speak the language of each of these cohorts. And they are becoming increasingly diverse, aren't they? So I don't know if that answers your question, Chris.
Actually, it's a good segue, because one of the questions I was going to ask is, you have also seen a lot of changes in the asset management business from what it was traditionally.
Yes.
In both of our cases, we've been kicking around for 25 years in this industry. Yeah. What are some of the things that specifically in asset management you've seen change for the benefit of the consumer, and how do you see that kind of evolving going forward?
Well, I think it's hopefully mostly all positive. Working and running investment businesses for US in 15 years, not the US has it right, but and not all trends go to Canada, and not all trends emanate from the United States. But, I see, for instance, we've been working hard on this for a number of years from an asset management perspective, insight selling, not pushing product, really sitting down and asking how each advisor, dealer, institutional client, how they construct portfolios. Right. And then how we can help you better construct that portfolio. And that's, I don't want to, the term institutionalized is probably not a good term, because that's the negative connotation, as positive connotation. I'm not sure that you can identify the better terminology than I can. Right. But it's something that it's just, we have so many building blocks. The innovation is pronounced in asset management. And the famous Goldman Sachs study says that, over 30% of assets 5 years out are going to be in products that don't exist today. And I tell you, I've done that with my own businesses, and it's right. From emerging markets, my goodness, I started in the late 80s. What are these emerging markets? What are these things, to obviously, hedge funds and private markets, alternatives, and ESG, sustainability, on and on and on. All these products come at you. But more and more and more, I'm seeing a continued need to, how do you effectively put this all together, as I call it, in a more all-weather portfolio. Right. And you can't essentially replicate what the Canada Pension Plan does for your clients, right? But you know what? 5, 10, 15 years ago, it's 5 or 10, 15 years from now, it's going to look a lot similar to how they invest as you can for your clients, except the big difference is that, the CPP has a 100-year time horizon, and they're managing for the average participant, and a wealth advisor has complete huge array of different needs and aspects of their clientele to match. So anyways, just, I just think it's the changes that are positive. We're focusing, I think, more on portfolio construction as an asset management industry. We're trying to be better business partners. Like, listen, we can provide research and tools more. Ask the managers. We'll give the advisors more what you need. Obviously, we like to have the assets as well, but if you think of what the amazing work that advisors do on the advice side, and the tax in the states, and succession planning, all that work, arguably, obviously, it pains me to say as an asset management professional, but that's actually more impactful than the investment return, and it's been demonstrated as such. So put a little more heavy lifting on the asset management industry if you want to, if you feel comfortable, and then choose a select number of partners, but not just the quote unquote product. Portfolio construction insights, capital market insights, research. Tools, et cetera. And that will, and I've seen it here in the US accelerate, especially the IRA community and others. They're really asking more and more of asset managers so they can focus on what they do best. And of course, the asset managers are anxious to help, clearly, commercially speaking. Right? So, yeah.
Well, that was sort of my next question. So you led very well into that because you worked in the U.S., so saw that market, lived in the U.S., and what do you see there? Because it tends to be, as the saying goes, they're 10 years ahead of Canada, and to your point, they may or may not make it up to Canada. But what are some of the things you think are different in the U.S. that could be applicable to Canada, based on your viewpoints?
Well, I'll start on the investment side because so well, Chris, the wealth side, both sides of the border. But it is quite it's quite amazing actually when you see what I experienced here in the U.S. on the asset management side, and I come back to Canada, and I said, well, listen, I think these 5 or 6 trends are going to come to Canada. And for instance, I mean, we all know it's ETFs. Okay, so. Right. ETFs, I'm in the camp. The ETFs will exceed mutual fund AUM. It will. It won't exceed revenue of mutual funds. They're much higher fees than ETFs. But it's amazing how we think, these things are passe. Now they're at $10 trillion US dollars globally. Okay,
10 trillion. Wow.
And right, and so they'll ETFs in the US will be bigger than mutual funds in the US first, and it'll happen in Canada. It might be 20 years or so. But just do the math and you see where it's happening. Yeah. More importantly, it's just another effective building block alongside mutual funds and OMs and individual securities. And it just allows you more tools to put together a better portfolio for your clients. That's all. But the ETFs, of course, manifest themselves different in Canada because we have far more active ETFs in Canada. Right. So these trends happen, but they come up and sometimes they evolve differently in a local market for various reasons. The big reason, of course, is that the disclosure requirements initially in the United States were so more onerous for ETFs that the managers didn't want to give away the secret sauce. They went all passive, whereas in Canada, so that was just one of the reasons. So big. So, ETFs, the sustainability, by the way, came from Europe. And I ran global businesses for years, asset management. And I saw this happening, ESG, sustainability. Why is this not here in the US and Canada for the retail investors? And then I think COVID just accelerated it. Whoa. I mean, this is exploding. And so we've been very fortunate to be in front of that, especially in the thematic environmental space. But that came, and it was always resided in the big pension plans in Canada, never in the retail space, on both sides of the border. Europe, it came, and it is here and is growing by leaps and bounds. What I'm most fascinated with, which I think might be the most significant trend globally in the asset management and wealth business, is private markets being offered more and more to the individual investor.
Right.
And it's complicated, a lot of education, liquidity, private equity and infrastructure and real estate and private credit. How does this stuff get in the hands of an advisor to clients? Well, it can now. And it's like make sure it's not like dynamite. Make sure you just take your time with it.
Right. Handle it gently, not all at once. Yeah.
That's very good for investors. They're long term. They don't just provide risk diversification. They broaden your return opportunity set. And so the democratization, and I've been on TV a lot saying this, and people are tired of me saying this. And I didn't coin that term, by the way. Right. But I'm really excited by it because I see this $15-20 trillion market globally now getting in the hands of the advisors on behalf of their clients. And listen, we've been on a risk-on environment. I mean, COVID-induced fiscal monetary policy. I mean, why wouldn't you just keep loading money in a risk-on environment into the equity markets? But we're having a bit of a wake-up call. We'd be happy to talk about that now.
Forever, right? Yeah. Some of those Bitcoin people are learning some lessons too.
So maybe it's an inflection point to step back and say, how do I start introducing these new concepts into my client's portfolio? I'm not saying U.S. is ahead by the game, but I'll tell you right now, Blackstone, KKR, Carl, they're pushing us hard, getting it soon into 401k. That's the biggest pool of assets here in the world, which is in the United States. Right. That'll come there first. And then obviously us, Mackenzie, and our wonderful partners, Northleaf, are trying to work with other competitors in Canada to get them in the hands of individuals. That's an exciting area because ultimately it's good for Canadians, good for Americans to have these in their portfolios, 5, 10%, 15%, whatever it is.
And exposure.
That's right. Correct.
Yeah, no, I think they're very insightful. And to your point, and we're seeing it almost in real time. that's happening as we speak. And it's good. It's good. It makes everyone sharper. It makes these portfolios a little bit more resilient, to your point.
Yeah.
As people have learned, not everything goes up forever. Sometimes it comes down. And this is where these other sort of non-correlated type of assets really come in handy.
You got it. Chris, can I put a plug in for China for a second?
Absolutely.
Because I forgot China, my favorite topic.
Sort of lent in, because I was going to say, you've also done a lot of work in China, and I know you've been there many times now and have a very close relationship. So maybe expand on China and what's happening there, because that certainly will have an effect on the whole asset management business.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, because it's a big topic, and I've had 3 tours of duty, my last Mackenzie and my prior 2 employers with China. So this is we're at a point from an investor and advisor that China's too big to ignore, right? So you have to start investing in China, because you won't complete your portfolio without an exposure to China. Every investor in the world outside China is underweight China, given the size of that market. We're second largest stock market, bond market in the world, just enormous size, right? But now it's accessible, and it wasn't readily accessible up until 3 or 4 years ago. So it was accessible, and you start investing in it. And as you know, that's kind of like the new economy too. Their economy is only 40 years old, essentially. It's therefore their sector exposure in China really nicely complements the more established markets in the United States and Europe and Canada, right? So it has actually a really nice risk diversification principle to it. It's still volatile, right? But it's still volatile. So I'm always pro, from an investor's perspective, start the journey with stocks and bonds into your portfolio from China, and understand it and looked at. Now, it's complicated, right? Because there's always noise around China. There's trade tensions, diplomatic tensions, Canada, U.S. Get it, right? So and now there's a chatter about ESG. Maybe every country goes through their journey of human rights infractions, right? So you can argue or not, where every country is at this point in time. We in Canada certainly went through that journey, as we know, and the U.S. are still going through that journey. So, again, that's fine. But understand, in China, the E and the S and the G, they're way ahead on the E now. The environmental, like they're doing well. They're the largest producers of wind turbines and batteries, electric cars. The G, the governance, pretty darn good actually now, because Bloomberg and MSCI, they included it in their indices, and they didn't for years until they had accounting transparency. The yes, the social, of course, that's something that is becoming increasingly a topic about China. I would argue that, give them credit for bringing 375 million people out of poverty and another 450 million to go. So that's a good check mark on the yes. And then, of course, as global investors start to invest more and more in China, they're going to have their own particular sustainable ESG lens, and they're going to make a decision and probably start to apply some pressure on perhaps some companies in working in some areas that they feel that perhaps improvements can occur in human rights. So that's my 2 cents worth. I'd say be educated. The asset managers can help you be educated and start dipping your toe in it and figure it out. It's good. Again, it's good for investors to complement your global portfolio by having allocation.
At least should be considered and looked at. And as I said, I think you've done a really good job there. So now I go into what I call my rapid fire question.
Oh, here we go.
So I got 3 questions for you. What do you love to do? What do you love the most? What do you love to do? What's the first thing that pops in your head? So if I said you can only do this for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Oh, geez. Chris, that's like, it's I'm a stuttering actuary now, right? I have a tough time sometimes work or pleasure. That's the thing that people probably, so I got 2 weeks ago, I still go to the work side. I like leading people, right? I really enjoy the interaction and creating an environment where my leaders can do their best work and feel good about that one. We talk about DE and I a lot. It's the kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That I has been around. That I has been around a long time. You're in our entire career. Like you always try to create. You've done this, an inclusive culture where people can ask questions and do their best work. On the pleasure side, I have a whole host of things. I like reading and golfing and
music.
I love music. Yeah. Movies. I love movies. I still got to go see Top Gun, so it's a lot of fun.
I see you're about the 5th person now who's told me that. So now I really have to go see it. So the second question is, what's the best piece of advice you have ever received in your career?
Oh, wow. I've had wonderful mentors. I've been so blessed. I really have. And when you're approaching quote unquote retirement or whatever that is, you start to reflect, you really do, about all those people that helped you to do better during your career. I started my career. I'm a full-fledged actuary. And so I was an actuary, pension actuary for 3 or 4 years. And there's one gentleman that I just marveled at his communication skill as an actuary, by the way. And I won't say his name, I won't embarrass him. But he was the one to tell me that, you're young in your career and you spend 99% of your time doing all the math and the PowerPoint presentations and it's done. And then you got to present it and you spend 1% of the time getting the communication right. Oh my goodness, is that completely reversed, isn't it? Because, how many times you've been in front of an audience, a client, your team, and, I said, darn, I wish I was able to practice that better to convey what I wanted to say, right? I mean, I study speakers. I love watching, the Obamas and others, see how isn't it great? So I don't even listen to the words sometimes. I just watch, see how their intonation of their voices and their hand contact. Yeah, so that was the greatest thing. So you got to spend almost as much time on preparing for your message as you do as developing the work behind the message. So, yeah.
Yep. I love that piece of advice. And finally, how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, I'm not a legacy guy. You're probably the same, Chris. But people ask that question lately. And of course I want to be known as a good husband, a good father, good grandfather, and good son. Okay. That's really important. It really is really important to me. Family's important to me. But I would say, I'd hope on the work side that, the various companies I've led that, I've got a lot of emails, wonderful emails and messages and text messages. A lot of them saying, "Hey, thanks for creating a modern business plan. Thanks for us leading record sales like that." And then I get the messages saying, "Thanks for walking and by my office and saying hi and asking how my family's doing, or remembering the names of my kids." Boy, first of all, I said, "Boy, was that me?" That was me. I did. But that's really heartwarming. So, kind of maybe a authentic leader that was good enough to admit his mistakes and good enough to ask for help and know he's not the smartest person in the room, and try, Chris. I tried so hard to listen more and speak less. I struggle with that every day. Even today, I'm doing this.
You and me both. Yeah.
But I don't know. I'll leave it at that. But that's a nice question.
And one thing, so certainly my perspective, and I've certainly known you quite a while. That it's all authentic. Like that, knowing people, and when you walk by people's offices and knowing their name, that's not any put on. That really is who Barry is.
Thank you.
So. I usually do a rant or a summary of, really what I got out of this. And really what I got out of this is, what I would have anticipated is, you have a long, successful career. And one of the big things is because of your ability to communicate. You're an excellent communicator. You know how to take, as I said, complexity and make it a nice, simple message. And you also give something that people can buy into, so, you sort of be that authentic leader. So, if there's a takeaway that my audience can take from this is be that authentic leader and be a good communicator, but also be a good communicator from the heart. So Barry, it was so good to have you on the show. I wish you certainly well in your retirement, and hopefully you come and see us down in Miami, because we're not that far away. I'm your host, Chris Reynolds, on Turning the Page. And if you've liked this episode, make sure you give it a nice big like, and we'd love to see your comments in the comment section. Anything that you liked about this one, and anything you want to see in the future. With that, enjoy this episode, and see you in the next episode. Thank you. So if you've liked what you've heard today, do us a favor and hit subscribe. That way you'll find another episode and another actionable takeaway on how to keep building a better business.